Hi, my name is John Scher, the president of DataLink Research Services, and you are about to learn software by means of a creative new concept in the computer industry. The DataLink Video Professor takes you step by step through learning your new software package. He allows you to learn at your own speed. You can stop and practice anytime you want, and you can review any topics that you don't understand. I suggest that you view this tape in its entirety first, and then go back with your computer and your software and practice step by step. The DataLink Video Professor designed this tape to get you up and running quickly. And once you learn everything that is on this tape, your software manual will be very easy to understand. DataLink and the Video Professor look forward to helping you with other software packages in the future. And now I want you to sit back and enjoy this easy learning from the Video Professor. And here he is.
Thanks, John. I am the Video Professor. In this lesson, we'll be covering how to set up your personal computer and get ready to run your software. There are some simple housekeeping procedures that you must know how to perform, and that is what we will be covering in this lesson. We'll be using a PC-compatible system. Most of what we say would apply to any PC-compatible system using the MS-DOS operating system. But before we get started, I would like to introduce our assistant and student for today. This is Pam. Are you ready to get started?
Hello, Professor. Yes, I'm ready.
Pam, what are you going to use your computer for?
Well, I'd like to use it for several things, but first, I'd like to learn this word processing program.
Okay, Pam. In this lesson, we are going to show you all the things you have to know before you start using your word processing software. Let's start by showing you how to hook up the components of your system. All computer systems have these components: a keyboard, a monitor, and a CPU. Most also have a printer attached. There are many other types of peripheral devices which could be attached, but we will not be covering them today. The main component of the system is a CPU. The CPU, which stands for Central Processing Unit, is in reality the factory for processing information. We'll look more closely at the CPU later. Right now, let's see how the other components attach to the back. Pam, make sure the power is off before you connect any of your components. The keyboard is the main way data is entered into your system. It has its own plug, which attaches to the back of the CPU into a special round socket. The plug has a little notch on it so that it can only be inserted one way. Not all systems are alike. Your keyboard socket may not be in the same place as in our example. Some systems may even have the socket on the front or side of the CPU. The monitor attaches to what we call a port on the back of the machine. When you purchased your computer, the salesman should have been sure that your CPU had the proper port for the type of monitor you have. For example, a monochrome monitor must attach to a different circuit in the CPU than the color monitor. We will assume that you have the proper matchup of hardware. The video port on your machine may be located in any one of these slots on the back of the machine, but there will only be one port to match the plug coming from the monitor. Most monitors come with a cable already attached to it. Others include a separate cable which must be plugged in at both ends. All monitors have a power cable. This cable may have a special plug which will attach to the CPU. If so, the monitor will come on when the CPU is switched on. If the plug on your monitor will not attach to the CPU, then you will have to plug it directly into the wall socket. The final component of the computer system is the printer. There are many different printers available for PC-compatible systems, but there are only two ways they can attach to your system. There are serial printers and parallel printers. Most of the printers sold these days use a parallel type of cable connector, so that is what we will be showing you how to hook up. Serial printers are sometimes more complicated to install. They plug together much like a parallel system, but can often require expert assistance to install. Serial printers have some advantages over parallel. For example, they will work with a longer cable, but if possible, stay with a parallel type of unit. The parallel printer cable plugs into the back of the CPU, into its own port, called a parallel port. There is probably only one parallel port on the back of your machine, although it is possible to have more than one. There's another socket on the back of the printer where the other end of the cable attaches. It is impossible to connect the cable backwards. Many cables that plug into the CPU ports have little gizmos called strain relief screws. These keep the cables from falling out and causing a disaster. It's a good idea to make sure they are screwed in. You must also be sure to plug in the power cables on the CPU. Be sure the power switch is turned off before you connect it. The CPU power cable usually plugs into the CPU on one end like this, and of course to a wall socket on the other end. There, your system is all ready to go.
That wasn't any harder than hooking up my stereo.
Well, Pam, all systems may not be as easy as this one was. It would be impossible to cover all the variations that you might encounter when connecting your hardware. I have shown you how to hook up a simple, standard PC-compatible system. I hope that I have given you enough information to hook up your computer, even if it looks slightly different than this one. If you have peripherals such as modems or mice, you should consult the manuals that come with them. There's one other thing we should mention. The PC-compatible system we have been showing you is an XD-compatible. On the screen right now is an AT-compatible. AT-compatibles are very similar, but they almost always have a hard drive, and they usually require a program called Setup to be run on them the first time they are started up. Hard drives are covered in our Advanced DOS video, and you should consult your manual about the Setup program. As we said earlier, the keyboard is a principal component for entering data. Let's take a quick look at some of the keys. All keyboards have function keys. They may be positioned on the left side or along the top like this. These keys have different functions depending on the software you are using. In fact, a programmer can make any key on the keyboard perform any function he chooses, so it is very hard to generalize about what a key does. Some programs come with a template to remind you of what the keys do while you are running that particular program. All keyboards have a key called the return key. Sometimes it is referred to as the enter key. It is a key with the bent arrow on it. You will use this key often. It usually is used to tell the computer to accept a line of information. There are some keys that have the same functions as on a typewriter. For example, the Shift and the Caps Lock keys would shift to uppercase letters. All computer keyboards have Control, Alt, Delete, and Escape keys, which do different things in different programs. We will show you an example later. The keyboard will have keys with arrows on them. These may be separate keys like this, or the arrows may be on the number keys on the numeric keypad. There will be a numlock key, which changes the function of these keys from entering numbers to controlling the cursor up, down, left, and right.
Professor, what is a cursor?
Pam, the easiest way to explain that is to take a look at the monitor. The little blinking line is the cursor. It may look different in the different programs and at different times, but it always shows you where you are on the screen. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. You'll be seeing more of the cursor later. Let's look at the CPU in more detail. The CPU stands for Central Processing Unit and is the brains of your system. Let's look inside and look at a few of the components. We're going to give you a vastly oversimplified version of how a computer works. This circuit board that holds lots and lots of little electronic gadgets is called the motherboard. There are only two components on the motherboard that we are going to talk about. They are the CPU chip and the bank of memory chips. The CPU chip is the key component in your computer and handles all the processing of information. And over here, there is the memory. These chips are where all data is stored temporarily while your computer is turned on. Everything stored here vanishes when the power is turned off. Now let's look at a more permanent kind of memory. The data held on the memory chips in the CPU can be written to disks. Unlike memory chips, these disks are available for later use, even if the computer is turned off. The disk drives are located here in the front of the CPU. If your computer has a hard drive, you should view your advanced lesson for hard drive operations. In this tape, we will be discussing floppy drives like these. These floppy disk drives are the principal components for loading and storing data. You now see the floppy diskette itself. It can be likened to a phonograph record that plays rather than sound data. These diskettes must be inserted into the floppy disk drives almost like you would put a tape into a cassette player. Make sure that the disk is inserted with the smooth side up. The side closest to the head access window should go in first. Data is stored on the diskette in much the same way as on a magnetic cassette tape. This data is organized on the diskette in the form of invisible tracks and sectors, which are formatted onto the diskette. More about this later. Oh, by the way, since we are discussing diskettes, we should mention something about the proper care of diskettes. Diskettes are fairly fragile. Store them carefully and avoid exposing them to heat and sunlight, cigarette smoke, or physical damage. Avoid touching the exposed areas of the disk itself. Let's look at all these components and see if we can explain how they all work together. The CPU chip controls everything, all the processing and flow of data. It operates under the instructions from a program. That's all a program is, a list of instructions for the CPU. The CPU controls the flow of data from the keyboard. It sends data to and from the temporary storage into the memory chips. It sends data to and from the permanent storage on the disk drives. The CPU, under control of a program, regulates what is displayed on the monitor. The CPU also does all the mathematical calculations, just like a calculator. Pam, do you understand all this?
Well, yes, but I'm confused about the term CPU. Is that the name for the box or for the chip?
That is a little confusing. In small computers, the CPU is actually the chip itself. However, many people refer to the entire main portion of the computer as the CPU. We thought you should know this simplified view of how a computer works, but it is not necessary to know more to get a lot of work from your system. It is not necessary to know about bits or the binary system or how to program to be able to use a computer. The most important thing to remember is the difference between memory that is on a diskette and the temporary storage in the chips on the motherboard. For example, when you are actually working on a word processing document, it will be stored in memory in the CPU. But when you are finished with it, you must store it on the diskette for later use. Also, when you buy a software program, such as a word processor, it will be stored on a diskette, but you will have to load it into system memory before you can use it.
Professor, now can I load my word processing software?
No, Pam. First, you need to know a few things about how to start your computer and perform some DOS commands. DOS, the Disk Operating System, is a program that manages many of the computer's functions. You use it to copy diskettes, to move files around from one disk to another, and to see what is on the diskette. DOS is a program that lets you do all these things. Without it, nothing else can be done. In other words, you cannot run any software on your computer without first loading DOS. Since DOS is a program, it is stored on a diskette. Before you can use it, you must load it into the computer's memory. To start up or boot your PC, you must first load the disk operating system DOS into your computer. To do this, insert the DOS disk in drive A. On a one-drive system, there is no problem, but on a two-drive system, you may have to consult your owner's manual to determine which is drive A. Usually, it is the drive on top. Next, close the drive door and turn the power on. You should also switch the monitor power on. You will hear a beep. In a few seconds, a short blinking line will appear at the top left corner of your screen. Do you remember what we call this?
Yes, that's the cursor.
Right. The disk drive will activate and you will see a red light as the DOS software is copied from the diskette into the system memory in the CPU. You will then see a request for the date and time. You can skip entering the date and time by hitting the return or enter key twice. However, we suggest you go ahead and enter this information like this. The date is entered in month, day, year, order, with a dash between each portion. The time is entered using a 24-hour clock like military time. Use a colon between the hours and minutes. You can skip entering seconds if you'd like. You now see the A greater than sign. This will become an old friend as you will see it often. It is called the DOS prompt. By that we mean that the disk operating system, DOS, is waiting to be told what to do next. The A means that the system is ready to read or write from the A drive. A B prompt would indicate that DOS is looking at the B drive instead. The drive that is designated in the DOS prompt is called the default drive. Let's take a quick look at a DOS command. One of the most useful is the dir. This command stands for directory and produces a list of all the files, programs, and other groups of information on the diskette in drive A. Let's see what entering dir at the prompt will do. If you make a mistake, you can press the backspace one or more times before pressing the enter key. DOS reads the diskette directory and displays it on the screen. You will see that files on the DOS diskette with the first column being the name of each file. Now let's talk about these files a little more so that you have a better idea of what they are. Files are a way of organizing information in a way that the computer can understand. Some of these files are programs such as these files that end in exe or com. These files on the DOS disk are each separate programs which do different things. For example, the file format com is a program which formats diskettes. Other files may be a list of information like names and addresses, or they may be text, word processing documents. Files are usually either programs or data. Now, since we have a directory on the files on the screen, let's talk about file names and what they mean. Information is stored on a diskette in the form of a file by giving it a unique file name. File size and disk space are measured in bytes. The word byte is a computer term which can generally be regarded as the same as a character. A file should contain a program, a related group of data or documents, or even a collection of instructions to DOS. DOS has certain rules about what constitutes a valid file name. A file name can be 1 to 8 characters long with an optional extension. An extension is designated by a period followed by 1 to 3 letters or characters. The extensions can be especially helpful in grouping related files. As you can see on the screen, there are files with the extension exe, com, sys. Most extensions are abbreviations. These stand for execute, command, and system. Some word processors automatically name all documents with the DOC extension. All programs written in BASIC language end in BAS. LTR is an extension that is used a lot to designate a letter. There are many other types of extensions. In some cases, you will be able to come up with your own file names and extensions. Generally, if a file name has an extension, you must include it when you refer to that file. A file name can include the letters A through Z and digits 0 through 9. Oh, by the way, one more thing. No two files on the same diskette can have the same name. To summarize, we have learned that DOS is a master control program that manages diskette information. When DOS is loaded, the first thing it asks you to do is enter the date and time. Remember, you can enter the date by separating the numbers with either a dash or a slash as you are seeing now. Enter the time as you are seeing now. Remember, the time is entered as on a 24-hour clock without AM or PM designations. Information is stored on a diskette in the form of a file. Each file on the diskette must have a unique, acceptable name. To be acceptable, the name is always 1 to 8 characters long with an optional 3-character extension. At this time, let's spend a little more time on the dir command. You can use the dir command to get a list of all files or selected files on a diskette. When you use this command, DOS will show you a directory consisting of the file name, the extension, the file size, and finally the date and time this particular file was created or last modified. Let's clear the screen by using the cls command, like this. Now, let's try getting a directory on another diskette. Pam, put one of your word processing diskettes in drive A. Then type in dir. If you are trying this with a diskette of your own, the file names will be different than in our example, but the idea is the same. The first column is the file name. The second, the extension. The third is the size of the file. The fourth column is the date the file was last modified. And the fifth is the time it was written to the disk or last modified. Let's look at some variations on the directory command. If you have 40 or 50 files on a diskette, DOS will scroll directly to the end. It is very hard to read these files as they race by. There are two commands that will eliminate this problem. After the dir command, insert /p as you see now. When the return key is pressed and this command is executed, watch what happens. The screen stops at each screen full. Notice the message, press any key when ready. To advance the screen, press any key until the entire directory is seen. The second variation is to replace the P with a W. In other words, type dir/W. This will display the directory one screen at a time in columns. Watch. If there is more than a screen full of files, hit any key to advance to the next screen. You will notice that this method does not show the file size or the date and time. Let's summarize the directory commands. Use dir/p to see the file names one screen at a time with file size and date and time. Use dir/w to view the file names in a column format. Use the dir command for a quick scan of your files. The next portion of this video lesson will be devoted to the DOS command format. The reason for this command is that you cannot use a blank diskette right out of the box to hold your programs and data. The format command physically prepares the disk to hold files, checks for defective spots on the diskette, and sets up the directory. Remember those invisible tracks and sectors that we showed you before? They are not on your diskettes when you purchase them. The format command places them on the disk. You need to format a diskette when it is new. However, you can format it again at any time. This is called reformatting. But be warned, reformatting erases any information already on the diskette. Now, be careful here. If you are following along with the tape, be sure to follow our instructions carefully. We don't want you to reformat and erase your DOS disk. To format a diskette, load your DOS as described earlier. With the DOS diskette still in drive A, type Format. You will notice the message Insert New Diskette in drive A and strike the Enter key when ready. At this point, be sure to replace the DOS diskette with the blank disk to be formatted before striking the Enter key. Now go ahead and press the Enter key. Be sure not to strike the key with the DOS disk in the drive, as you will erase the disk. Notice the screen has the message Formatting. After approximately 1 minute, the message Format Complete will appear with the following information: the bytes of the total disk space, the bytes available on disk, and finally, you are asked if you want to format another disk. We don't want to, so we'll press N for no. This message may also include information about bad sectors. Now let's format a disk in the B drive. This saves some work. Put your DOS in A and your blank disk in B. Type Format B at the A prompt. Then strike the Enter key. Like this. Now we see the message, Insert New Diskette for Drive B and strike Enter when ready. Now we're formatting the disk in B drive. You will notice that we have some bad sectors on this disk. There's not quite as much usable disk space on this disk. Various versions of DOS give slightly different messages. Don't be concerned if your DOS reads different than ours. Check your DOS manual if you get confused. Now, we have formatted a diskette. It is ready to hold information. Let's look at a way to save our original DOS disk. It is always a good idea to save all your software programs in case you accidentally lose or destroy your original diskette. We'll use the copy command to make this working copy of your DOS disk. Copying a DOS disk is just a little trickier than copying other diskettes. DOS has two files on the disk called hidden system files. They do not appear on the directory of the DOS disk, but they must be copied. There are a couple of ways to get these hidden files copied on a new disk. We will discuss the simplest, which is to copy them at the same time as the diskette is being formatted. Simply change the Format command to read Format, and then the drive name where your new disk is. Then add the /s option to copy the hidden files. So format B:/S. Make sure your command looks like ours. Strike the Enter key and notice the message. Insert new diskette for drive B and strike Enter when ready. Strike your Enter key, and now we're formatting and copying our Hidden Systems file. You'll notice the bytes that were used by the Hidden Systems file come up on the screen. And here they are. After the disk has formatted and the hidden files have been copied, you will need to copy all the regular DOS files, the ones you can see on a directory. Let's see how we do that. The copy command can copy one or more files or an entire diskette. The copy command is executed by typing the word copy followed by a space and our source drive designator, or more simply the drive we wish to copy from, A: or B:. Then the file name followed by a space. Then the destination drive. The destination drive is the drive where you are sending the data. Unlike in more primitive operating systems, the DOS copy command is completely logical. For example, it is from to, or source destination. Let's look at some examples of copy commands. Let's copy one of your DOS files from one disk to another. Start with the DOS disk you wish to copy from in A drive and the blank formatted disk in B drive. The command to copy the file tree.com is copy A:(tree.com B:) source destination. Notice the lights on your drives. They come on when the drive is operating, reading or writing data. Don't open the drive doors when the lights are on. You will see the message, one file copied, when the file has been copied.
Professor, do I have to copy all my DOS files one at a time?
No, you can copy the entire disk full of files all at once. This is done by using the star option. It is often used to make a backup or extra copy of a diskette. Let me stress the importance of always making extra backup copies of your data disk and working copies of your programs. Now, let's copy all the files on the disk in drive A to a formatted disk in drive B. Type in copy A:** space B:*. Make sure the spacing is correct. Then hit the return key. Now, let's watch as our files are being copied. Now, this will take a while to copy all these files, so we'll jump to the end. Now we have 36 files copied. Did the files really copy? Watch as we select B drive. This is called changing the default drive. We just type B: at the A prompt. Notice that we now have a B prompt. Now let's get a directory on B drive. The files are all there. Now let's change the default drive back to A. Type A:*. There, now we have selected A. To summarize copying files, you can copy one file at a time or a whole disk full of files. Use the star command to copy a whole disk full of files. There are many, many more ways to use the DOS copy command, but the ones we have shown you will get you started, and they are enough to handle most of the situations you will encounter. Remember that if you want to make a bootable diskette, one that you can start your computer with, you must use the format command with the /s option. The delete command is another important DOS command. This is the command to make a file or files vanish from the disk. Perhaps you need to remove old documents you no longer need. Let's use the disk that you just copied your DOS files to and delete the tree.com file. Put the copy in the A drive, and at the A prompt you could type del tree.com and press the return key. I prefer to put the drive designator in this command. So let's change to del_tree.com. This will make it less likely to erase a file from the wrong diskette. If you check the directory, the tree file will be gone. See? It's gone. Be very careful with the delete command. Once you have hit the enter key, the file will be gone. In this case, if you want the tree.com file back on your disk, recopy it from the original. So type copy B:, which is now the source drive, tree.com space A:. The A drive is now the destination. And there, we have one file copied. And it's there in the directory. The delete *.* command will remove all the files from a diskette. Be very careful with this command. It can cause a lot of damage very quickly. Type del:*. DOS will ask you if you are sure. Answer Y for yes if you want to continue. Now we have an empty disk again. Another trick we want to tell you about is how to do a print screen. The print screen command will dump the contents of the screen to a printer. Only what is on the screen will be printed. This is a very handy feature if you wanted a copy of all the files in a directory, for instance. To print the screen, make sure your printer is connected and online. Push the Shift key and the print screen key at the same time. The screen contents will be printed. Now that we have shown you the print screen command, there is one other trick you may need. Sooner or later, you will do something that causes your computer to get stuck or hang up. If, for example, you did a print screen with no printer hooked up. After that, your computer won't budge. There are other ways that this can happen. If you get stuck and cannot get your computer going again, rather than turning it off and starting over, you can warm boot the computer. A warm boot recycles the machine much like turning it off and then on, but is much faster. To warm boot your machine, hit the Control, Alt, and Delete keys at the same time, like this. It is possible to lose data with a warm boot if you are in the middle of a program, but if you are really stuck, it is faster than turning off the machine.
Professor, am I ready to load my word processing program now?
Yes, you are, Pam. Now that we have shown you the basics of how to use your computer and a few of the DOS commands, we are ready to talk about running programs. There are many programs available from many sources. The manuals available with this software usually tell you how to start up the program. Usually this is done by placing the diskette containing the software in A drive and typing in a special command at the A prompt. Sometimes there are more elaborate procedures to follow. The manual usually warns you to back up the programs before using them. Again, this is very important. Unless the software manual tells you otherwise, use the *.* command to copy the diskettes. Okay, Pam, let's see you start up your word processor.
Well, Professor, first I'll boot the computer with the DOS disk. Then I'll enter the date and the time. Now, I want to make a working copy of my word processing software, so I'll need to format a blank disk. To do that, I type in format A: with the DOS disk in A drive, and then I replace the DOS disk with a blank diskette and hit any key. Then, when the disk is finished formatting, I'll copy my word processing files onto it. I can do that by putting my original word processing software in A drive and my blank formatted disk in B drive. Then I type in copy A: $:B:. Now after all the files have been copied, I'm ready. Now how do I start the program?
You have to look in the manual that came with the word processor. I looked while you were copying disk and found that the command to start the program is WPRO. So, put the diskette in A drive and type in WPRO. There, you're in the program. From here on, you should follow the instructions in your software manual or pick up one of my video lessons on that software.
Well, is that all there is to DOS?
No, there's a lot more to know about DOS, especially if your computer has a hard drive. My tape on advanced computing has that information. But you know the basics. Many people use their computers a long time and very successfully, knowing no more than what was on this tape. Would you like to hear my 10 hints for successful computing?
Sure, Professor.
Number 1, always back up your software. Make working copies of the disk and use the copies. Keep the originals in a safe place. Number 2, make backups of important data. Floppy disks are fragile. Don't allow important records to be lost. Number 3, label your software. You will want to be able to find what you want easily, even a year from now, when you have many more diskettes. Number 4, handle your diskettes with care. That means keep them away from heat and away from cigarette smoke. Don't expose them to magnetism. Don't put them next to your phone, for instance. And don't touch the exposed surfaces. Number 5, always exit your program and get a DOS prompt before you shut off your computer. Number 6, computers are very literal-minded. Pay attention to typing things in exactly right. If you get a wrong letter in a file name, you may delete the wrong file, or if you don't leave a space in the right place in a DOS command, the command may not work. Number 7, save your work to the disk often. When you are using your software, say a word processor or spreadsheet, you could lose hours of work if a power failure causes your computer's memory to fail. Your work will be safe if you save it to a disk. Number 8, keep drinks away from your computer keyboard. A small spill can be costly. Number 9, don't be afraid of your computer. It's hard to hurt it. As long as you don't physically abuse it, it's hard to do any permanent damage. But remember that software is not so durable. Protect your software from accidental erasure or damage. Number 10, use your manual. It can take time to learn how to use computer manuals. In your DOS manual, for example, you must become familiar with the syntax or style that is used to explain commands. It is very helpful to know this syntax. There should be a section in the manual that explains it. If you need to know exactly how a command must be written, where to put the source and destination drive designators, for example, the DOS manual will tell you. DOS is intended to be friendly to the user, and in comparison to some earlier systems, it is very friendly. So stay with it. It will all become clear. Well, Pam, I think that's about enough for this lesson.
Good. I think I'm ready for some practice. Thanks, Professor.
That concludes our video instruction tape on getting started with your IBM-compatible personal computer. There are many more things to learn, but we have tried to show you the basics in a way that can easily be seen and understood. Remember that you can rewind this tape and view some or all topics again. There are many more DOS topics and instructions for using hard drives available on my Advanced Personal Computing video. Other tapes available from the Video Professor are on your screen right now. So have a wonderful day and auf Wiedersehen!